Can high school coaches and state associations actually get along, work together, and problem solve? Find out in this week's episode of the Greatest Games podcast with Coach John Ziemba of Emerson High School. Hello and welcome to the Greatest Games podcast brought to you by 816 Basketball. I'm one of your hosts, Brian Rosefield, and I'm joined by my co-host, Chris de Blasio.
Thank you, Brian. Pleasure to be here as always on the Greatest Games podcast. The chance for us to catch up with basketball coaches from around the country and have them tell us about their greatest games. As always, it can be their time as a head coach, an assistant coach, a college coach, a high school coach, and sometimes we just have guests back from, say, episode number 38 on this podcast.
That's right. We do, and it's crazy. Again, maybe one day we will release our pre-show chatter, Chris de Blasio. It's always great to catch up with our guest a little bit before the show, but this guest originally appeared on the Greatest Games podcast, episode 38, as you mentioned, July 19th of 2020. I mean, it's been a fast year, and he's back. He is now tied for first, if I'm correct, in a number of appearances on the Greatest Games podcast. So he'll go for the record here, maybe in a couple of weeks. But Coach John Ziemba of Emerson High School, welcome back to the Greatest Games podcast.
Thank you for inviting me back. I usually don't get invited back that often. Sometimes I wear out my welcome, but I appreciate you guys having me back.
Well, we're here tonight to have a discussion of a little different kind. This is going to be fairly New Jersey high school sports centered about some proposed changes by the New Jersey State Interscholastic Athletic Association, the NJSIAA. Coach Ziemba is helping spearhead an effort by basketball coaches to further the discussion about some of the changes they want to make. But also, Coach Ziemba brings experience as a longtime volleyball coach at Fort Lee High School. So this affects multiple seasons of his. Coach, if you could just go ahead and kind of explain what's going on and where we stand right now with these proposed changes.
Well, what happened is, just to be, try to get through it, quick here. The state came out in New Jersey. The NJSIAA runs the state athletics, and there's Colleen McGuire. She's someone who is now in charge. She's been in, probably for about a year, a little over a year. She's come in. She's done a tremendous job. All the coaches, ADs, they needed somebody new to come into and really, liven things up a little bit. And she did a tremendous job. And but she can't. It's like everything else. Sometimes you don't agree. And the state came out with something. Basically, the numbers in all the sports have gone down. Now, I don't, is that because of COVID? Is that, what the real reason? Everybody has their different ideas. But the NJSIAA, they wanted to get more kids involved, because that's what, if there's not kids involved in sports, then there's no need for an NJSIAA. And what happened is they wanted to, cut the seasons. And this came out during COVID, and we were sort of blindsided by it, the coaches. As a coach, losing part of my season, I just didn't take it well. I felt like that the guys who did take it well, or the girls who did take it well, then they don't really want to do their job. Like I always said, when I don't want to go to practice every day, I'm done. And, so we got a little offended by it. We started, I learned something from this. I learned that if you, do things the right way and maybe don't yell and scream about things and talk about things. And we had a petition, and we brought in some big name, New Jersey coaches. And we really, asked the state to think about it. And to their credit, they did. And they gave us back a number of days. But, we're hoping still to tweak a couple things. But, we'd like to feel that we had a little bit of something to do with this.
So I'm I'm coming at it pretty blind. Now, Chris and I talked about this a couple of weeks ago. Now, the beauty of being Brian Rosefield is that my memory is awful. So I remember talking about it. Let's just be honest. I always remember conversations with the great Chris de Blasio. Let's just be honest. But I don't remember the content. So I've got questions. And so I'm coming at it really as a listener here in South Carolina, but all of our listeners that are not familiar with what's going on in New Jersey. So I'm really kind of coming at it pretty blind here. So when you talk about Colleen McGuire, she is, as looking at it, she is the chief operating officer of the state association. It looks like. So when this decision was made, was it her proposal to shorten seasons, or was this a committee, like an activities committee is what it would be called here in South Carolina? How did that all come about? And you mentioned being blindsided, Coach. So tell me more about how it really kind of came down.
There's a committee. It's called the Calendar Committee. And they basically come up with the sports calendars. And for some reason, this was something that they said they had in the works. And, the calendar committee, from what I understand, is made up of like 5 either athletic directors or principals. And then when the calendar committee presents something, it goes to this executive committee, which has about 50 members. And this thing, the initial vote blew right through. It was like 49-1 in favor of basically like cutting the season down, 3 weeks, about 4 games. And we just didn't understand why. And, now that I've really listened to it, I do sort of see their point. And Chris even said that before, that, they do have, like, I'm not going to say we're 100% right. I like the fact that we sort of met in the middle, but I still am one of the biggest things to me on why kids don't play multiple sports. All right. Is because, and I might get myself in trouble with other coaches, but number 1 is specialization by the player. And number 2 is specialization by the coach. You got a lot of young coaches, and I don't want to say just young coaches. You have a lot of coaches who are not willing to work together to share athletes. And to me, that is the biggest difference. When coaches in the school are not on the same page, that kid is being tugged in 100 different directions. And that, to me, and listen, I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but I'd like to see somebody prove it differently, that it's specialization and it's coaches not working together. In my opinion, that's the reason kids don't play multiple sports.
So again, just to explain a little bit in further detail, one of their things with shortening the seasons was to give a break between seasons instead of having the overlap of, the fall season into the winter season and winter into the spring season. And overall, on its surface, I don't think that's a terrible idea. I agree with Coach about specialization, but I do think, and again, I point to an anecdotal evidence, but 2015 at Cresskill, when we had our very good basketball team, the football team also played in the state finals. And Sean Kelly, our second best player, got an ankle injury in the football championship game. And the next morning he came to basketball practice. And for the first 3 weeks of basketball season, he was not playing to effectiveness. Now, in the long run, it didn't hurt us. We still won a sectional title. However, I can understand the need for kids to maybe have a break. What do you think about that?
Without a doubt. But again, I don't want to go against another sport. Well, football does go into December. Like football, it's a long season. And, a kid coming off of football, yeah, hell yeah, he needs a week off just to recover. But most of the other sports, that doesn't happen. Like, I coach our girls volleyball team. We're done first week of November. There's plenty of time off there. The way they tweaked the schedule, I'm all for a week, maybe 10 days off, especially football players. They need the time off. But to have more than that, I use my son a lot. I judge how he's a freshman in high school. He plays baseball and basketball. We had one day where there was snow. He was walking around the house. I want to kill him because he was, I'm bored. I don't know what to do. We had no practice. Kids want to play. And this is one of the things I said. I've been a phys ed teacher in a grammar school for over 30 years. And I'm amazed at just watching kids. Kids want to do two things. They want to be with their friends and they want to play. And they can do that forever. And to me, that's good for their mental health. So again, and I think that's why when we met in the middle a little bit, and now hopefully they could tweak the schedule a little bit and give those kids, all right, let's give them a little time off. But let's not give them 3 weeks off or 4 weeks off. That's to me, not going to do the job.
So when they mentioned the time off as being a reason, did they cite, now this is the athletic director in me, the admin in me, did they cite any kind of studies? Did they have any kind of doctors that said football players need 10 days, their volleyball players need X amount of days? Did they just throw out a number that was it backed up by any kind of science or any kind of study?
Well, one of the things they said, they have a thing in New Jersey, they have student ambassadors. So like they'll have kids who maybe they're an athlete from a school who will go down there and to the state, and they'll go to meetings and they'll say things, and and it's great to listen to the kids a little bit, to get an idea. But like Jeff Jasper said, Jeff Jasper's a coach up here at Pascack Valley. He's won over 1,000 games. I mean,
Coach. He was on episode 115 3 weeks ago, so our listeners are very familiar.
Amazing.
Yeah. So Jeff is, to girls, to basketball, what Bobby Hurley was. And Jeff had a great line. He said, the kid, if we're listening to kids, then why do we need coaches? So I guess some of the kids might have gave feedback and said we need more time off. Maybe the principals who are on one of those committees said that. Maybe the athletic director said that. They didn't state like specifically football, this, they didn't. What they wanted to do, their main thing they said was they want to balance the seasons. They want it for the kids' mental health, which, of course, yeah, you don't want a kid to be, but again, my thing was the mental health comes like in New Jersey, come June 21st, it's open season. Every coach is going to go after every athlete because that's when we could start our summer practices. So now you got the football coach, you got the soccer coach who thinks it's his season. The football coach thinks it's this season. The basketball coach is trying to get his season. Whatever coach is trying to get, and it's just craziness on a kid. I think the actual stress comes during the summer, and that's what causes kids to maybe say, hey, listen, I can't do these 3 sports. I can't do it no more. The coaches are, like I said, baseball, they think their season ends and we go right now into AAU. Football says it's about us, and us basketball coaches, we want our piece of it too. I don't know how you fix that, but the problem is coming up June 21st when everybody starts yanking kids in a different direction. And that's what I'd like to ask you, Brian. Like, you were an AD. Did you have those kind of problems, or did you ever have to meet with the coaches in the summer and say, hey, listen, like we have blackout periods in New Jersey, which I think is one of the best things the state ever did, where you can't touch the kids. You can't talk to them, go on vacation. The summer has become a real headache when I talk to families. They want to go away. They want to do things together.
Yeah, it really is. So I'll tell you, here in South Carolina, obviously we can't make our kids be at anything in the summertime. It's all voluntary, and that's a state rule. And it's the phrase that popped into my brain was it's an arms race, and that's not the it's probably not the best word picture, but it kind of is, where coaches, and first of all, I'm at Ridgeview High School. Our coaches work extremely well together. We just hired a new baseball coach. He's talking to our basketball coach, and our football coach, and our cross country coach works with our volleyball coach. We all get along. So we're very fortunate, and we have the kids' best interest at heart. So I'm very fortunate with that. So I've never really had to deal with and step in between coaches and say, whoa, that kid needs to be there, and then he'll come to you. But what I use the phrase arms race because it's actually today, as we're recording this on June the 1st, we'll post this on June the 2nd. Today was the first day for really technically summer workouts. And so we had kids everywhere. We're still in school, but we had kids everywhere, and I had coaches that were handing out schedules. And so it's just I could just feel the angst with coaches, like, okay, we got to get work in because the other coaches and the other teams are doing stuff. We got to keep going. And so I hope I'm answering your question,
yeah,
Coach.
no,
I think
right
it's
on what
I'm fortunate to have great coaches that work well together, and that's not the case everywhere. And so, but I hear you. I think you're dead on the money that kids are pulled in different directions. I mean, it's a lot. It's a lot going on. It really.
The biggest change in my 30 years or 30 whatever years I've been doing this, and this has to do with, like, when I first started coaching, all the coaches taught in the same school. So we had to see each other in the hallway. We had to see each other. We sat down and had lunch together. We became good friends. We hung out together. We went out for, a soda after practice. And, now in a lot of schools, the coaches don't work in a school. And now, you might get a coach saying, hey, listen, we're having football practice. If you want to play for this football team, you better come here and not go to that basketball game. Or, a basketball coach might say, hey, listen, we got a game today. If you go to that baseball practice, you're not going to make the basketball team next year. And you don't know who's what they're telling kids. Like, that is a big change. It is a big change, and it's happened slowly over the years. And you see a lot of coaches who, like I said, they don't work together. We don't see each other. So, we don't have to face up to each other. And the other thing is, obviously, I think a lot of young coaches have come up with the club, the AAU mentality that says, my sport is, got to be played almost year round. And that's listen, at the big, like by us, the Bergens, the Boscos, they have the bodies. They could do that stuff. But in like where Chris is at Saddlebrook, where I am, and Emerson and Fort Lee, if we don't share athletes, by sharing, I mean, if we don't say, hey, listen, it's a good idea if you play basketball. It's not turning the blinders on. It's helping each other. I won a sectional championship in volleyball this year, and our girls basketball coach sent me a girl. She was first team all league, never played volleyball before. She was this all league soccer player, but Billy Straub, who was our head girls basketball coach, he really encouraged the girl to play, and it helped us. And the girl, phenomenal athlete. You got to try to help each other. That, to me, that's the thing. And it's really changed. And I don't like going against, telling kids don't play this other sport. I'm not like that.
So that was their major point. I never really heard that it was the participation levels.
Yeah. They wanted to get the participation levels up, and their feedback was, there's not enough time off between sports. And that's why kids aren't playing multiple sports. Now, that was their main thing. Yeah, they said this probably has something to do with but their main thing was the what they got back from the student ambassadors, what they got back from the ADs, what they got back from the principals. But they never talked to the coaches in the beginning. And to their credit, when we went, and we started petition and we started trying to get to people, they listened. and they did give back days, and bottom line is, we didn't agree with their initial move and their reasoning.
I will say this: there was somebody quoted in an article about this, and I think this person was dead wrong. He said, "One thing we've learned from COVID is that we may not need as long of a preseason as we've had in the past." I think that's one of the most short-sighted quotes in the history of Earth.
Yeah, that was one of the things that got me a little riled up, and I've sort of.
I don't know if that principal saw some sports this year, but again, I'll call my team out for it.
Listen, our games this year, what our games were. Our games, they were summer league games. They could have been played without a roof. There was no execution. You were playing some nights 3 times in a row, then you didn't have practice for 3 days because you might have been shut down waiting for a test to come back. You need to practice. That's where, I don't have to get into that. Obviously we need practice time. And, the other thing they were suggesting is to play 4 games a week. And I'm going, how in the world do you play 4 games a week in basketball when you have to take a day off?
Yeah. And that just wears kids down.
So I think the state listened somewhat. Will we ever agree? Probably not. Because if I sat down and I talked to the people on the committees, I'm sure they wouldn't agree with me on a number of things, and I might not agree with them. But the bottom line is that we sort of met a little bit, and whether it was because of us or because of another group of coaches, or I don't know.
So they're adding 9 more days to the season that they had initially taken away. But now what you're looking for is for them to add some more games back to that, right?
Yeah. Here's the thing. Like in New Jersey now, you have, as a coach, you have 3 different options. You can play 26 games total, 24 games plus something. I don't even use the other ones. I just go 26, and then 22 games plus. So it gives you 3 options, the bottom line. You could fit one of 3 options and use that when you make your schedule. And what they've given us is one option: 22 games plus a league or county tournament. And what I would like to see is them at least give us another option, say 24 flat instead of 26 flat. Just because of the fact, like you and I, Chris, we make our schedule a certain way. Bergen Catholic makes their schedule a certain way. They want to go to, high-end tournaments and they want to do these showcases, and maybe they could. The bottom line is, I think there has to be at least 2 options for schools to choose from, because not everybody is the same. In New Jersey, it's, there's a certain group of teams that are just, they're like college teams, and they may make, but again, even the bottom line, you may make your schedule different than I make mine, and we're both basically small Group 1 schools. At least give us 2 options. And I don't think that changes too much.
Mm-hmm. So wait, you're saying the John Ziemba Winter Classic is not a major showcase tournament? You're going to be playing in this coming winter?
Coach, when you play at 10:30 in the morning at 12 noon, we will not get a lot of media coverage. Believe me.
I feel like this is breaking news here. I feel like you're kind of shocked as your manager, Chris de Blasio, one that helps you make your schedule. I'm shocked and appalled.
Well, Brian Rosefield, December 28th, Tuesday, December 28th. There's no excuse for you not to be in Stan Woods Gymnasium on the campus of Emerson Junior Senior High School.
Yeah, when it's.
I'll be honest though, 10:30 is kind of early. That's early.
The gym's named for the wrestling coach too,
yeah.
So.
Oh, there you go.
When you coach basketball and the gym's named after the wrestling coach, it's an uphill battle.
I like it. Well, all right. So here's a question for you. And again, I'm coming at it from a South Carolina perspective. There are things that our state association will hand down at times that I may disagree with, or other coaches around the state may disagree with. And a lot of times I've sat in a lot of rooms where it's just a bunch of just finger pointing and I can't believe they did this. Why'd they do this? It's always the same, and just a lot of no solution type talk. And so to hear you, Coach Ziemba, and I know Chris has been talking to you as well, for you to come with a solution, talk about that process and tell our listeners that maybe in South Carolina or wherever, how you really got that done. You didn't just throw your hands up. You actually brought a real solution to the table. So talk about that a little bit.
Well, at first, we were like kind of angry. And that's how I get sometimes. I just get, I'm not an administrator. And I start looking around and saying why does this guy want this or this guy want this? But then after talking to some people and basically trying to understand where the state was coming from, we realized that, listen, they're not going to go back and give us everything we want. So we need to come up with something, and in a reasonable manner that they could maybe do. And we needed to reach out to some people who maybe had a little voice down there. And, listen, there was a couple other coaches involved, Jeff Jasper, Jay Mahoney. I mean, these guys they're legends in New Jersey basketball. I'm just trying to survive in Emerson here, and like Chris, and we're Group 1 school, but we love our sport. And listen, there's nothing wrong with sticking up for what you believe in. And I just didn't feel that the way it came down was really fair, especially in a COVID year. I just felt like this thing came out of nowhere. We got blindsided with it. And but again, to the state's credit, listen, this Colleen McGuire, she came in and I'm telling you, everybody said great things. Now, I don't know if it was just a committee, but to her credit, she is very involved too. She's the boss. And I'm sure she went back to the committees and said, hey, listen, we got, these coaches may have a point. I don't know. I don't know if Colleen McGuire would ever even talk to me. She might not like me. But I mean, my reasoning was not a selfish reason. Most people today, they want to work less and make more. That's not what our coaches want to do. We don't even care. Like, I don't even look at what we get. When they go negotiate contracts in schools, they don't even negotiate the coaching contracts anymore. That's like there's nothing there. We get what we get, and we just do it because, we felt it wasn't right for the kids, and they felt something was needed for the kids. So we met in the middle.
Well, Brian, just to be clear, Coach Jasper, we've had on the show, Coach Mahoney, who I've efforted for the show. Between the two of them, they have 1,710 wins. So between me, Coach Mahoney, and Coach Jasper, we have 1,713 wins. So I really put them over the top with that.
That's what I'm hearing. Well, Coach Mahoney, we want you on the show. I'll
you get Jay Mahoney on the show. You'll like that.
What are the chances Coach Mahoney knows how to use Zoom?
I'm good friends with Coach Mahoney. We, believe it or not, or even though we go at it with our two teams when we play, Coach Mahoney is one of the first thing he ever asked me anytime I spoke to him is, how's your son? How's your son doing? And my son thinks he likes him. And I tell my son, I said, Jason, when you get on the court, he's going to have a kid crawling into your face, like wanting to kill you. Are like, don't take this as Jay, once the game starts, it's going to be, their kids attack. And, but Jay is I watched a show about Sullivan the other night.
Yeah.
With the Jamboree, and now he's coaching in the NBA.
He's at North Carolina. He went back down there with Hubert Davis.
Yeah, he was with the Nets, and Mahoney. He's a legend.
Well, Brian, I'm gonna since we're telling some coaching stories here, I'm gonna call Coach Ziemba out. I got word this weekend that Coach Ziemba told a good friend of ours that he better not guard Jason in a summer league this summer with one of his better guys. Like he better put a lesser guy on Jason.
I did warn Coach Gaskin. This is going to be my son's first step on the varsity court, and he may crap himself. So don't attack him too much in the first time he gets out there, because I don't know if he's quite ready for this.
That's too good. That's too good. Well, guys, this has been for me. It's been helpful. What else are we missing here that we didn't cover with this issue?
Well, I mean, it wasn't only basketball. They tried, that they are going to come. Like I'm the volleyball coach at Fort Lee, and we were allowed in a certain time frame to play an unlimited amount of games. Now they've cut that down to 24. It's a good amount of games in the amount of time. And I heard a couple volleyball coaches weren't happy with it, but there wasn't like a lot of pushback. Most of the pushback came from the winter sport coaches. I can't speak for wrestling because, I don't know the ins and outs, but the basketball coaches were the ones who really, I think, were looking at this. And again, they gave back. I may have, or the group we may have had nothing to do with it. I don't know. But for somebody listened down there, and the number one thing is when this thing does go through in June, I guess the vote is coming up in a couple of weeks, the final vote. That's going to be the way it's going to be for the next 4 years. So that's why we tried to really quickly put this together. And, hopefully the last couple things we have in mind, maybe we could get them. And like I told you about the option, giving teams a couple options on how to work their schedule. But again, that's it. The bottom line, people don't like change. And we didn't like change. We didn't think it was right. But then we also realized, well, maybe we got to meet in the middle.
Well, I think for me, the theme of this episode is just that, meeting in the middle, not just throwing your hands up and saying, this is what they always do. It's actually doing that maybe, and then bringing real solutions. And then kudos to you guys as coaches, but kudos to the state association in New Jersey to actually listen and come back and change things a little bit. I mean, to me, I'm a leadership nerd. I'm no perfect leader by any stretch of the imagination, but I always like to empower people, empower our coaches. I was just at a baseball meeting tonight. I want those baseball parents to be empowered to go raise money. And so now the next time there's an issue, y'all are going to be empowered to say, well, they listened to us last time. Let's bring another solution. Let's see. And they may not listen to that one that time, but at least they listened to you, and at least they showed some real change. So kudos to both sides of this. I think it's a beautiful thing.
I agree. And the bottom line, the state isn't looking to hurt us. Like, otherwise, I mean, why would you be in charge of the sports and just like they're not looking, to hurt us. They run the state. Yeah. Are people going to be happy with some things? Yes and no, but you do have to have somebody in charge. Otherwise it's just chaos. And, again, I came out a little angry, but then once, you start looking at it, you say, hey, listen, this, like I said, Colleen McGuire, she wants what's best. Maybe our input though got them to change their mind a little bit. And, hopefully we can get a couple final things across. And bottom line is, we're all going to move on. There's going to be a season, and whatever, their final thoughts are, that's what we're going to do.
Well, I'm impressed with everything that you've shared about Colleen McGuire. Maybe Chris de Blasio, maybe she would want to be a guest on this here podcast. You never know. But, Coach Ziemba, we always like to end on a fun question, and we've already asked you the normal fun question. So the question I'm going to ask you is, how many points is your team going to beat Chris de Blasio's team by the? Oh, go ahead now. Let me ask that question on the air. I won't start.
First of all, all right, we're not playing each other in the first round.
Okay.
If we're playing in the consolation game of our tournament, we're not even going to let that score out. If Chris and I are not playing in the finals, I don't know. Maybe we'll just play that game at like 7 a.m, the consolation.
It'll be one of those empty gym games that like Duke played against one of the historically black colleges back in the 50s.
Yeah.
There was nobody in the gym.
If you don't get to the finals in your own Christmas tournament, and listen, this is going to be no walk because all 4 of us are, we're building our program. So it's actually a pretty even tournament, but it'll be, hey, listen, that's what you want. So you got, 4 even teams, and we'll see what happens. Which team could get out of bed and be ready to play at 10:30 in the morning.
Right. That's right. You never know. You never know. Well, Coach, thank you for joining us like this and giving us a different perspective and a little different theme of a show here. So I think it's still on theme for the podcast here. I think it's going to help a lot of people. So we really
anytime you guys do a great job, and like I said, anytime I could help you, I know you had my buddy Freddie Hill on. And, listen, I will work on Mahoney, but I don't know if Colleen McGuire and I are buddy right now, even though we both have the same thing in mind. Maybe somebody else will have to reach out there. But I tell you what, she would be a tremendous guest because again, she's in charge of this, whole state of New Jersey, and she cares. She cares about the sports, and that's what's important.
That's what I love. So yeah, I want to talk to her just because of that. And just to hear a coach say that about a state association, somebody's in charge, I think that goes a long way. But we'll effort that as well. If you help us with Coach Mahoney, that sounds. I'm
going to work on them. Okay.
All right. Sounds good. Well, we'll go ahead and wrap this one up. For my co-host Chris de Blasio, I'm Brian Roosfield, and thank you for listening to this episode of the. We're trying something a little bit different and putting our advertisements at the end of the show this time. So if you haven't done it already, check out teachhoops.com/816basketball with Coach Steve Collins, and check out his Facebook group, teachhoops.com/816basketball. And Billy Kegler and the Competitive Mindset podcast are absolutely rolling. If you haven't checked out that podcast, we highly recommend it. He's a former guest on the Greatest Games podcast and doing an absolutely great job with the Competitive Mindset podcast. And you can still donate to our boy Takuma Lettsome in his fight against ALS. Head on over to our Twitter page at 816basketball and check out the pinned tweet there for all information on Takuma Lettsome. Thank you for listening to today's show, and we will see you again next week on the Greatest Games.